Hello everybody, welcome to United Stand. Erik Ten Hag, Tactics Explained. Let's do this. So, Erik Ten Hag, universally the manager that Manchester United fans want. But what do Manchester United fans really know about him? I think there's differing gaps of intelligence around him. Some people have watched Ajax play a few times. Some people have deep dived. We're going to use this screen. Not used it for a while, but I want to use this to show you how Ten Hag would utilise the squad we have at the moment, the problems he'd have with it, and why we need to sign players for him, which any manager's going to need. But back onto this screen, I think that when I think about Ten Hag, for me, there's three things that really jump out, and we will go into depth on this, but three things really jump out for me. This is a manager that intensely pressures high up the pitch. Possession is very key. You'll see it with Ajax consistently. They're over 60% possession or around that, which is a lot in modern day football. And I also think there's a hidden third. The centre-backs. I think the centre-backs are absolutely key in an Ajax system, and I don't see people talking about this as much as I think it is. The centre-back must be intelligent, and they must be able to manoeuvre themselves around the pitch to be part of the press, to cover the flanks, because the fullbacks will push forward. I don't necessarily think pace is essential, although it's a nice requirement. I think we've seen Ten Hag have centre-backs who weren't burners of pace. We've seen Daley Blind play at centre-back there, of course, as well. But football intelligence and the ability to defend on your own is very important, and I think that will expose some of our centre-backs, and a centre-back will be absolutely key in Ten Hag's tactics. Another big thing about Ten Hag and his footballing side is they're very impressive against the low block, which is something United have struggled with, even Mourinho, maybe even Van Gaal days. So this would be a massive improvement under Ten Hag. So let's go to the screen here. So what I've got on the screen here is United's team, basically, if we're playing a 4-2-3-1. Now, Ten Hag, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, depends how you want to look at it. But one of the things I do like about Ten Hag is the evolution. The evolution. If you go back to the Ajax team that got to the semi-final against Spurs, there has been evolution in relation to sales and recruitment. There's also been evolution in the style of play as well. At times, he's used a false nine, which isn't surprising considering he spent 2 years under Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich as his reserve team coach. And obviously with the recruitment of Haller from West Ham, they've got a target man now. People, again, I want to dispel some myths here. You never know which way it's going to go. Some people will say he won't be happy with De Gea, he won't be happy with Maguire, he won't be happy with Bruno, he won't be happy with Ronaldo. Well, I don't see why he wouldn't be happy with Ronaldo. Because Ronaldo is a number 9 that can hold the ball up, can do lots of things as a number 9, as well as being one of the best number 9s in the world if you provide him with chances. And in a team that's got a high press, high possession, and Ten Hag has shown that he can use a target man sort of striker in Haller, then I don't see any reason why Ronaldo would not be a player that Ten Hag would look at and go, yeah, I can make him work. And I think the adaptability of Ten Hag is something that is massively underestimated and underrated, in the fact that his teams evolve. I mean, look at Van der Beek, Ziyech, De Jong, De Ligt. There are others that have left that club, and yet he's been able to evolve and adapt. And that's not something I want to see at Manchester United. I don't want to see us build a team and then sell it. That's not what we're about. But a man who can rebuild teams and develop players, and he's very good at spotting players to bring in and then keep evolving, is obviously a trait that we need when we're building a club. I don't want to build a club and then sell it, but we do need to build a club, and Ten Hag definitely shows that. So, how do Ajax set up? Well, they do have holding midfielders, and it does adapt. And it's this adaptability and intelligence in the press and without the ball that really makes Ajax so successful. What you will see a lot of with Ajax is fullbacks pushing forward. And this is why the centre-backs to me are really, really important, because you will get situations where, well, it's probably unfair to do that. Like the centre defensive midfielder could drop in to the left-hand side of the centre-back. He could drop in between the centre-back, which we have seen Matic do as well. But it's about player, the word I suppose is adaptability, but it's about intelligence as well. It's the ability to know methodically what your job is. Because if you don't know that, and you're a very limited player, you're going to struggle in a Ten Hag system. Players must realise that ultimately what's the reason the fullbacks are moving forward and the reason that the holding midfielders are moving in between and here. It's about passing lanes. It's about options. It's about, you know, if Maguire's got the ball, he gives it to Fred, Gravenberch, players are coming in here, Luke Shaw's here. And when the fullbacks are pushing forward, what you will notice with an Ajax system very much is that the wide players will tuck in a bit as well. So you're always creating these little passing lanes, and that's what it's about. Fluidity is the word, I suppose. Fluidity is key in a Ten Hag system, and passing intelligence is key. And I think there are risks to the way that he plays. One of the things I would say is that if an opposition's got the ball here, you're not going to see Fred there, you're going to see McTominay here, you're going to see this sort of thing. The vulnerability of Ajax is the counter-attack, the long ball, the flanks. You can see why the flanks are vulnerable, because if the ball's here, you can get in behind the full-back, and then that's where you can exploit them. And also the long ball over the top, it bypasses the press. We see this with Liverpool all the time. We see this with Liverpool all the time. They play a high line, there's a lot of offsides, they rely on that offside trap, and they've got recovery pace as well. Because ultimately, playing through Liverpool is a living nightmare for most teams. You can't do it. And it's the same with Ajax. You can't play through them very easily. Some people describe it as a bit of a man-to-man scenario. When I think of a man-to-man scenario, I think of Leeds and I think of huge spaces. I don't really see that with Ajax. I think they have the capability to almost have responsibility for a man, but there's so much intelligence in the way that Ten Hag sets those players up and the way the players adapt to Ten Hag, that the press, the first press when you lose the ball, the high press, the press in the advanced areas is massively important. And you will see overloads. You'll see side overloads as well, where the team basically will just shift from this. And the reason that works well is you've got fullbacks who want to play high up the pitch. You've got adaptable centre backs. You've got two holding midfielders who become part of the press as well. You've also got these narrow wingers that, if Rashford's playing out wide here, that's a long way to come over. But if Rashford's already tucked in, you can be part of that overload on one side. And yeah, they can switch the play over there, but it takes a hell of a ball to switch the ball over there when the ball's over here for the opposition. So this style of play that you see with Ajax, and we're hopefully going to see at Manchester United, is a total brain reset for some of these players. And that's why centre-backs, as I said, are very important. CDMs are very important. I almost look at that United side and I think, who really comfortably works in this system? And I think a lot of them would work really well in the system, but the reality is they've played in such lethargic, basic counter-attacking systems for 3 or 4 years, a lot of these players, that they're going to have a complete footballing re-education, a footballing reset. So which brings me on to, I suppose, the next part of players that would work in this system. Look, well, I'm going to highlight Harry Maguire here. In an Ajax system, you need a centre-back that's intelligent and able to defend on their own. So that if the full-back's forward here, the press is high, that ball comes into the channel. You'll see it a lot with Ajax. Their centre-backs do a lot of defending in the channels. They do a lot of their defending over here. Because ultimately, if you are pressing from that side and it's a high press and it's an overload on one side, the obvious ball is to go down the channel. So that centre-back, that left-sided centre-back, is almost in a left-back position. Varane would tuck in, and you would hope that one of your CDMs comes across as well. Is that playing to the strengths of Harry Maguire? I think he's obviously a player that doesn't like to play a high line, doesn't like to defend on his own, and isn't particularly mobile to cover these sort of areas. It'd be very interesting to see how Ten Hag would get the best out of a player like that, because we know Manchester United are very reluctant to play him. Varane would work really, really well. I think fullbacks-wise, Luke Shaw would work well in this system. The right-back situation is very interesting. My concern with Fred and McTominay, and we're only using players that we currently have as well, does Fred and McTominay have the ability to drop into here, and ultimately be key to the passing lanes? I don't think either of those players have got that capability. Fred, as he's shown, is more box-to-box. I think McTominay's more box-to-box, but both players go hiding when the ball is with the centre-back. And in an Ajax system, these two players, the CDMs, or the adaptive to the 4-3-3, they're absolutely key. They're key. They drive the press. They drive the possession. And when you're in a team that's got 60% possession, let me just say, the reason Ajax don't concede many goals is because they have such high possession. So they're not, and this feeds to Bruno as well. If the ball is with Bruno here, and that team is playing high up, and he misplaces a pass, you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable to that ball in behind. You're vulnerable to that counter-attack. You're vulnerable to that ball into there. Possession, very important, and it's definitely progressive possession with Ajax because they create so many chances. And look, we're not just talking about the Dutch league here, we're talking about averaging 15 shots on target in the Champions League this year. That's not against Dutch opposition. But one of your biggest parts of defence, and one of the things that Pep Guardiola has shown really, really well, if you've got the ball, you can't concede a goal unless somebody wants to score an own goal, in which case that's ridiculous. So possession for Ajax is about creating chances, and they are a probing side, and they are very good against the low block, as I said. but you're only good against the low. Why are Man United so bad against the low block, and why are teams like Ajax and Man City so good against the low block? It's the ability to get high up. So let's have a scenario here where we're high up, we're up against the low block. Again, we're using players that we have to use. So we're high up, you've got your fullbacks bombing forward. You've got a scenario like this, you've got your centre-backs who sometimes will become part of the press as well. That's absolutely fine. We see Liverpool do it, we see Man City do it, no problem with that. But the reason the possession is so high and the shots on target are so high is because they'll do things that Manchester United don't do. Bruno gets the ball, he's looking for that killer pass all the time. End of possession, unless you score a goal. Fred, McTominay, do they have the passing range? Shaw, Dalot, do they have the players to play with to keep possession? I think with Sancho you do. Rashford's shown himself this poor to be another player that when he gets the ball, he's either going to run into a blind alley or he's going to shoot. Possession is not going to be high when you're holding on to the ball for maybe 2 or 3 seconds before you give it away on the attack. Possession is high in an Ajax system, and shots are high for Ajax because when they've got the ball, they'll probe, 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 they'll shoot. That's what they'll do. It's intelligent possession. If you've got the ball, you can't concede a goal. So if we do lose the ball, we want a high press and we might want to overload. But when we've got the ball, we want to work for the opportunity. And against the low block, it works really well because I wouldn't describe it as patient build-up. It's careful build-up. When you've got the ball, we're always looking for the forward pass. We're always looking to create the chance. But let's not get the ball and try a 40-yard, 20% chance it's going to come off thing that maybe Bruno's been doing a lot. When we get the ball, let's not try and shoot from 40 yards like Rashford's been doing. So there is another 2 players that I think in the Ten Hag system are going to have to evolve. I think Rashford and Bruno could be very good under Ten Hag, but their game needs to change. And maybe this is the problem of the last couple of years, where you're playing for a coach like Solskjaer, who is ultimately playing on the counter-attack with a deep line. This is a very different team. So, look, coming back to the screen here, I think we've learnt a few things there. I think, ultimately, centre-back isn't rocket science. Centre-backs are huge in Erik ten Hag's system at Ajax. They've got to be able to cover the flanks. They've got to be part of the press. They've got to push their full-backs on. And they've got to be adaptable with their CDMs to be able to find passing lanes and intelligent. Is that Maguire's game? I don't think it is. Let's give him an opportunity, but he's going to have to reset the way he plays football because back fives with 2 holding midfielders, deep lines with people protecting you is not the way we want to play. Similarly with Fred and McTominay, I actually think McTominay in this system, I wouldn't write him off because one of the things about Ajax I have noticed is they win a lot of aerial duels in the midfield. They've got big players in that situation and they do win a lot of their duels in that position. McTominay is a player that with clever coaching could improve, but he's got to learn to drop in between the centre-backs. He's got to learn to stop hiding and he's got to learn to basically play at a higher level. Fred in this system would be interesting, but again, he's got to learn to use the ball more intelligently. I certainly don't think you can't play Fred and McTominay. It's got to be one of them. The number 10, Donny could come back. Didn't really talk about the number 10, but the number 10 position is quite interesting for Ajax. You've got to support the number 9 a lot, and you've got to be intelligent in the way that you move to show for the ball and pass. Wingers, Sancho and Rashford could work. Sancho will work in that system. As I said, they narrow the pitch quite a lot. Ajax, they almost give the width and use the byline as a defender in itself. It's almost like go down the flank if you want to. They're quite narrow, their wingers. And the reason they're one of the things I think the reason they are wide, the wingers do tuck in, is because it makes it easier to overload the side of the ball where the pitch is. If I just go back and explain that to you, how do we do that very, very quickly? So you lose the ball here. Fullbacks are back. He's gone too far. Dalot, you've gone too far now. You've gone too far. So balls here. Wingers are tucked in. Balls here. Sancho goes. Fred goes. Bruno moves. And Rashford's part of that as well if they want to go across their back 4. And you're basically overloading that side and it works really well. And Ajax have shown that. I think he's exactly the right manager to go to for Manchester United. As I said, I think his development of players, his ability to rebuild teams, his ability to adapt his team. The Ajax side of 3 years ago, whilst it's got similar traits to now, they have adapted. Haller's very different. They've lost players. He's shown his fluidity to do that. But ultimately, the headlines for me are that Ten Hag wants to win the ball high up the pitch. He wants to have lots of possession and he wants to create lots of chances. Well, hello, I'll have some of that at Manchester United because, in contrast, we have been a team for 5 years, even under Mourinho, who wants to play deep, who wants to counter-attack, doesn't want lots of possession and doesn't create many chances. We're going completely the opposite. Similarly to what Rangnick wanted us to do but's not been able to implement, that is what we want to do. Centre-backs, really important in this system. CDM, really important in this system. They build from the back. It's not about hitting long balls. Interestingly, they will hit a long ball with Haller because he's got that potential to hold it up. But there's lots of support around him. It's another option you've got under Ten Hag if you've got a player like that. But ultimately, a lot of their game is possession and it's building from the back when you've got the ball at the back. And therefore, you need intelligent football players to play this system. I think it's exciting. I think it's exactly the way that Manchester United need to go. I think it will be a long process. I'm on board for that. I'm not expecting to fight for the title next year. Maybe not even the year after that. I think you've got to erode and dismantle a team to build a team. And ultimately, there are a lot of players in our system. That 11 I showed you just there, if we just go back again, that to me is a bit all over the place at the moment, as you can see. But if I go back to the stable sort of thing that you'd recognise, that's just a team that we have at the moment. Like, we do need to buy. For me, Maguire doesn't work in this system. One of the midfielders has definitely got to go, maybe even two of them. You probably need to really come down hard on Bruno and say, look, if you don't know what you're doing, Donny will do it and you'll learn. And we probably do need another winger and another striker. But that is why you're going to have the patience. That is why it's so important to get it right now. I did take some other notes. I just wanted to add them in case I've missed them. Variation in tactics, we've spoken about that. Centre-backs, we've spoken about. Relentless press, adaptation, passing, lanes, possession. Weakness is the long ball and down the flanks, which we spoke about as well. Adaptive ways in which he's played. He can play a false nine. He has played with Haller for a lot of this season. Brilliant at breaking the low press. Narrowing the pitch, yeah, we've seen that. Recovery by overloading on one side. Intense pressing. High possession, yeah, we're good at that. Yeah, I suppose there's a couple of things I would just add in here as well. Ultimately, this high press and high possession is very easy to summarise in the fact that you're trying to keep the opposition away from your goal. A lot of what Ajax does is in the opposition's half. That's not rocket science, is it? I mean, ultimately, if the opposition have got the ball in their own half, they're nowhere near your goal, and you're always going to be prone to the counter-attack. Liverpool are prone to the counter-attack. City are prone to the counter-attack. Everybody concedes goals. It's impossible. I think we almost live in a world when we're analysing potential managers for Manchester United. Well, they do concede goals. Well, wow. Of course they concede goals. These things happen, but the way that they concede goals tends to be counter-attacking football. There's very few teams that can play Ajax and play them off the park. And I mean, I'm sure Man City are probably one of those because they've got better players. The exciting thing with Ten Hag is what he can do with better players and a better budget. And this is really useful to watch this sort of video and see my summary of how Ajax play and the strengths of Ajax. And then you can take it and do your own research and what your own thoughts are. But this is why I'm so strongly in the Ten Hag camp over Pochettino now. Because, and I've said this a few times now, if Liverpool are looking to replace Klopp and Man City are looking to replace Pep, they're 100% going to be looking at Ten Hag for what we've just spent 15 minutes talking about. Because the similarities between how Liverpool play at the moment and how Man City play and how Ajax play with Ten Hag are very clear. Pochettino isn't going to really do it for Liverpool or Man City. I'm sure they'd go, he's a good coach, but he's not going to excite them and he's not going to be the man. Ten Hag would. I don't know whether they'd appoint him, but they'd definitely look him and he'd definitely be high up on the list because he wants to play that high line. He wants to be in the opponent's half, creating chances with high possession and making it very difficult for them to get out with the overloads and the intelligent pressing, the adaptability of players, people moving from one position to another, a CDM dropping into the left-back position so the left-back can fall forward, a CDM dropping into the right-back position because you're overloading on the left-hand side and the centre-back's gone to the left-back position. Intelligent football. It's a huge job for Manchester United. It's a huge job. I cannot overemphasise how big a job this is. We brought in a very intelligent coach in Ralf Rangnick, and he's basically had to down tools on trying to get these players to play the way he wants to play. He's basically had to go to a better version of what Ollie was doing. Over the last few weeks, we almost have become a little bit like Ollie with a deeper line, but creating more chances. This is a total reset. Is that because these players can't be arsed, or is that because these players are not good enough? But ultimately, a full summer with these players will make a big difference. And I wouldn't be surprised if Rashford thrived in this system. I wouldn't be surprised if Bruno did. I wouldn't be surprised if McTominay did. But look, there's definitely question marks over those three players because they've not had good seasons. There's bigger question marks over the likes of a Fred or a Maguire, because I'm not sure the system suits them. I mean, people will say, oh, Fred will work in this system. I think he'd utilise Fred, but he might end up on the bench, because what does Fred bring in intelligent positional sense? What does Fred bring in ability to drop into the back four and take the ball off them? What does Fred bring in the ability to play good passing lane triangles? That's not really Fred's strength. Fred's strength is, I think, he's got a great engine, he's got great pressing ability. He'll have to improve his overall game, but he might be able to do that, because if you are training 3 or 4 times a week with these types of coaches, it's going to be night and day to what they've been doing for the last 3 years. Anyway, smash a like on the video if that was useful. Get your comments in below. I'm sure a lot of you have got different opinions or different takes on who would be successful and what we should look at. I do want to do a video later on when it's confirmed about the type of players I think he'll go for, because I've got 4 or 5 that I think might surprise people, but I'm not going to start jinxing it in that level. We probably are going to have to do a video on Pochettino, to be fair, just to try and keep it fair. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks everyone for watching. Smash a like. We're back at 8 o'clock and I'm on Twitch. TUSFC's back this week. It's going to be more important than ever with no football on Twitch, Goldbridge TV. Speak to you in a bit.